We're on towards the bottom of Samach Gimel Lamed Beis, where it says Hahu Mavoya. First word on the line is he, about 10 lines from the bottom. Hahu Mavoya, there was a Mavoi, the Havadaire Be Lachman Bar Ristak. Lachman Bar Ristak lived there, he was a guy. Taisus actually brings from Rabbeinu Hananel that he was Gairis Haman. Haman was living there, or Haman Bar Ristak, I'm not sure if okay, anyways, there was a guy living with them. Amrulei Oigir Lan Reshusach. So they said to this guy, why don't you rent us your property in order for us to be able to carry there? As it said in the beginning of this Pedic, that when you have a guy living amongst Yidden, the only way that you could be able to carry with him is not by making an Erev Chatzeres. You can't make an Erev with a guy. And the other option, which is to be Mevatel Reshus, is also not an option. The only option is to rent the use of his rights of the property of the Mavoi. He wasn't interested in renting them his rights for the Mavoi. Also, they said to Abaye, what should we do? Abaye says to them, Zilu batilu reshusaycha legabichad. Everyone should be mevatel their reshus to one individual, that everything belongs to one person. And then, what do you gain by that? So now it's just one individual. It's like there's one Yid living here in the place of a guy. And in the case of a Yachid and a guy, we learned before that Eliezer ben Yaakov, the first Mishnah says that Eliezer ben Yaakov holds when you have one Yid and one guy living in a Mavoy or in a Chatzer, so then the guy doesn't ask. It's only if there's a minimum of 2 Yidden together with the guy.
There's one owner, basically.
Again,
one owner.
In this case, since they were all mevatel there, there's many Yidden there, but they were all mevatel their reshus to this one Yid, so it's only one Yid and one guy. When there's one Yid and one guy, it's not a problem. We're towards the bottom of Samach Gimel Lamed Beis. Amrulei, so they said to Abaye, is this a good eitzah? Midi hu time, what's the reason if there's one Yid and one guy, that there's no issue of the guy being there, ela de lo shchiach, it's the deity. It's not common to live with a guy, that one Yid should live with a guy. The Gemara explained before, the only reason you have to have a schira, you have to rent from the guy his space, in order to be able to carry there, it's a takan of Chazal. They didn't want a Yid to live with a guy. They didn't make that takana if it's one Yid with one guy, because that's an uncommon thing. If one Yid will not live with a guy. Many Yidden could have a guy living amongst them. So in such a case, they made the takana. But v'hacha hakadairi, over here there are many Yidden living there. What difference does it make that you have this bittul or shus that everyone annulled their ownership to one person, but b'payil, many people are living there. So the takana of Chazal, that you should have to rent from the guy his space, should still apply. So Abaye says, no, this is also considered to be unusual. Kol betuli reshusaychel legabe chad, being mevatel their reshus to one person, is also milsa de lo shchicha. It's also something which is uncommon, and there milsa de lo shchicha legaze barabana. So therefore, something like this which is uncommon, chachamim were not geizer der gzeira that you have to rent out the reshus from the guy. Just to clarify what Rashi here explains, there's a big machlokes here, Rashi and Taisvis in the Pshat and the Gemara. But Rashi's Pshat, if they're going to be mevatel their reshus to one person, so now it's one Yid, it's like one Yid and one guy, so they don't have to rent their property from the guy, correct? But how is it going to help for them to be able to carry? They didn't make an Erev Chatzeres, there's a bunch of Yidden over here. So Rashi says they're not going to be able to carry out from any of their houses, but this house of this person that they will mevatel their reshus to, they'll be able to carry out from their house. Right? If they will mevatel their reshus, that means that they are mevatel to him. They can't carry out from their house into this place. Adarabah, they're mevatel that they're not using this place. Only from this person's house they're going to be able to use. And besides that, Rashi says they'll be allowed to carry inside the chotzer, or inside the mavoi, they'll be allowed to carry. Whatever is there, they'll be allowed to carry. But from their own houses, this is not going to work. They're not going to be able to carry from their own houses. That's Rashi's pshat. Okay, so now what happened? Also, Rav Huna Bereder Rav Yeshua, Amr l'shmaita kamei de Rava. So Rav Huna Bereder Rav Yeshua went and reported this eitzah that Abaye said to Rava. Amalei, so Rava said, "Them came bitalta teiris Erev meisa mavi." It's going to come out that the whole concept of Erev is going to be bottled in this mavi. People are going to this mavi going to forget about the union of an Erev. They're doing this eitzah of being mevatel everything to one person, and they're not making the schiris with the guy. They're not making an Erev. People are going to forget about the whole union of Erev. They're going to carry in a mavi without an Erev.
Isn't it mevatel? Doesn't it make it one big reshus when you're mevatel yours?
It does, correct. But if you mevatel, you can't carry out from your house into the chotzer. Because you're mevatel. The whole concept of mevatel is I'm renouncing my ownership in the chotzer. My use. What?
You're a guest.
But you could only use from his house. If you're using from your own house, your ice, the whole bittel becomes ice. Mm-hmm. The bittel is dafka if you're not using your private use from your house. Mm-hmm. Talk to Gemara de Ma'arvi. So we're gonna ask. So Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua tells Rav, no, they'll make an eruv also, even though the eruv is not effective for the guy, but they're gonna make the eruv in order not to forget about the eruv. Fragt the Gemara. So Rav asked them, that is, Yoimru eruv moel b'makom nachri. You're going to make an eruv, and then people are going to make another mistake. So people are going to say that an eruv works even when you have a guy. The eruv doesn't work when you have a guy. A guy can't participate in eruv. So if you're going to make an eruv, it's going to bring another mistake. So he told him, no, the machrezinon. We're going to make an announcement. We're going to let everyone know that the eruv that we're making is only that people shouldn't forget about that eruv, but really the eruv doesn't work. You're going to take out an ad in the paper. You're going to be machrez. Frekte Gemara, achrastel adardeki. This announcement is going to help for the children. In other words, for the next generation, people in the future are going to know about this. Just to make an announcement now is not going to help for the future. People are going to think and come in the future to make a mistake that an eruv works even for a guy. The Kitzur, the point is, Rava did not like the Eitzah of Abaya, that they should all be mevatel their reshus, and you could even make this eruv that doesn't really work. Rava had a different Eitzah. Elama Rava says, Rava, what should you do? Lezel chad minayu. Let one of the Yidden go. Likrav lei, become close to this guy. Strike up a friendship with him. And then, v'lishal minei duchta. And then ask of him and borrow from him a space that he has, that you can, v'leinach bein midi, to put there something, to put down one of your, the Yid should be able to use the space that the guy has over here in this chatzar, on this mavoi, that you should be able to put something in his property. The havelek is schiroi ulekitoi. And now, the Yid will become like his worker. Like you're using, you have rights to use things in his property, so now you have a shtickle ownership, like his worker. Schira lekita, Rashi says schira is a person that works for him all year. Lekita is a person that works for him, lokit, to gather, the seasonal worker that works for him in the times when there's harvest. So, what's the mile if you become schira lekitai? So the Gemara says, "Va'amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, afil schira, va'afil lekitai, naisen eruvai v'dayai." If you're a worker of a guy, even though the guy himself cannot participate with the eruv of a yid, but if you have a yid that's a worker of a guy, so you have a shtickle ownership now. In this house of the guy, this yid could place an eruv, could participate with an eruv together with the other yid in their vidaya, and that works, that's good enough. So if the guy does not agree to rent out his space to you, so let a yid become like his worker, and then the Chacham were makel and said, being like his worker will be enough of a reason that the yid not could participate with an eruv. That was Rava's Eitzah. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. So Abaye said to Rav Yosef about this Eitzah, he asked a question, how about, let's take this a step further, not in the case of a guy, but Hoyisham Chamisha Schiroi Vehei Lekitoi Mahu. What happens in a case that you have 5 people, or 10 people really, 5 schirim and 5 lekitim, 10 different workers that are living in one house? What's going to be the halacha? What's the shaila? The question over here is, usually when you have one house, only one person that is the owner of that house has to participate with the eruv chatzeris. You have many, all the family members that live in the house, they don't all have to participate individually with the eruv chatzeris. Why not? Because they're just living in the house of the person that's the one owner of the house. The question, however, is, what's if you have 5 workers, 10 workers that are living in a house? So just like we just said over here, when they get to the guy, that when you have a worker working for the guy, that he could place the eruv instead of the guy, or he can place the eruv even though the guy can't. Should I say the same thing if you have 10 workers living in 10 rooms of a house? Maybe each individual worker has to place an eruv, he has to participate with the eruv separately. That was his question. So as Rashi explains, the basis of the shaila is, do I use this svara of schira lekitoi only as a leniency, in a case where the guy can't participate as an eruv? So then the schira lekitoi, which is a yid, will do the eruv, or do I use it even lechumra? When you have 10 workers living in one house, they're not all considered to be part of the bnei bayis. Each one of them separately has to participate with the eruv. That was his question. So Rav Yosef answered, no. If Rav Yudah Mashmul said this concept of schira lekita, that if you have a worker that he could place the eruv even though the guy can't, they use it as a leniency, Would they say this concept to be machmer? To say that each person individually is going to have to participate with an Eruv? You don't say that. If they're all living in the same house, even if it's in a separate room, it doesn't matter. They all participate in the same Eruv. We'll see later. There's going to be more details about this in the Gemara, about people living in the same house in different rooms. Well, there's be coming up.
Each one pay different rent. I mean, each one pay rent for the.
That might be different. If they're renting, so then that's already like apartments, like different apartments and one. So then it's they are separate. Well, here we're talking about that they're living in the house, they're not renting. And the truth is, even going back a second before, it said before that the Yid should become friendly with the guy. And then the Gemara, they said, V'leinach ba midi, that he should put down something, that the Yid should put that item to use there in that space. Rashi holds that he doesn't have to actually put anything over there. He has to be a friend with him, that he would allow him to put something down over there. Le asnuchi be midi, that's the Lashon Rashi, that he would allow him to put something there, but you don't have to actually bring anything in over there. Sagt the Gemara Guf, this statement. Let's go back to the statement itself. If you're a worker of a guy, nice and Eiruvin, so the Yid, which is the guy's worker, could make the Eruv, could participate with the Eruv Vidaya, and that's good enough. Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said about this Chiddush, Kama Ma'alya Hoshmaita, how Geshmak, how great this Chiddush is. This Kula, this new Chiddush over here, that this is a good Eitzah, with a guy, that the Yid could make the Eruv. Another thing Rav Yehuda Mashmol said, Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmol, Shasa Revius Yayin, a person that drinks a Revius of wine, Al Yaira, he shouldn't paskin any halacha. Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman heard this, he said, Loi Ma'al Yahoshmaita. Now this halacha, this statement of Yehuda Mashmol is not so geshmak. Why not? Myself, as long as I didn't drink a revius of wine, my mind is not clear to be able to paskin halacha. You have to drink some wine to open up his mind to be able to paskin halacha. So he was rating the statements of Rav Yehuda Mashmul. This is geshmak, this is not geshmak. So Amalei Rav said, my time why are you saying this? Rav Acha Bachanina said, my dechsiv roye zaynis yoivad hain. A person that hangs around with zaynis loses all his wealth. What does this refer to? Kol ha'omer shmua zu noah and zu einena. The lashon of zaynis. So we read it as a combination of these words of zu noah and zu einena. A person that says, this shmua is beautiful, this shmua is not beautiful. Ma'abet hayna shal Torah. You lose all the wealth of the Torah that you have. So we just learned about this in the Maimah this morning over here, the Maimah Vayeshev Tafshin Yud Beis. So there the Rebbe explains that the why does a person lose? Whole hayna shal Torah. The Chiddush over here is he doesn't only lose that part of Torah that he says is Eina Noah. Even that part of Torah that he says is Noah, it's Geshmak, and he likes it. He's involved in it. Nevertheless, he'll lose that as well. Because what's Torah? Torah is not the Chochmah. You cannot retain the information of Torah. You can't connect to the Torah if you don't realize that the Torah is the Eibishter's Torah. If it's just a Chochmah, so then you lose the whole entire thing. And there's also the Marshav here says about this Gemara that it's not only when a person says Shmu zu na v'Shmu zu eina na. Even if you just say Shmu zu na without saying Shmu zu eina na, just to say Shmu zu na is also not allowed. So much so that there's the there's a sefer from the Taz on Alatayra. It's called Divrei David. It's a sefer on Rashi and Alatayra. And in the beginning of Parshas Kairach, where Rashi says, Parshas Zu Yofen Edreshes, B'medrash Rabbi Tanchuma, he asks on Rashi, how could Rashi say Yofen Edreshes? It's darshan beautifully. You can't say Shmu Zu Na, even if you're not saying Shmu Zu Eina Na. You can't, person shouldn't say Shmu Zu Na. So he explains, it gives a whole shot how Rashi could do that and what Rashi means. But according to the Mashah, the Taz, they say that even just to say Shmu Zu Na is a problem. So this was the Tainan of Nachman here.
Why should that be a problem?
Because if a person is only learning it mitzad the fact that it's Noah, not because it's Eibish's Chachma, the problem is not only that he's rejecting, that he's saying this I don't like. But if at some fact that he's learning it mitzad, it's the Chachma that he understands and appreciates. So you see, he's not connecting to the nice Natayra, to the Eibishter that's in it.
Is there a common lashon leimalon mar kama milim al yusuf?
Yeah, he had it a few times in the Gemara. Yeah, and Chanami. Yeah, I hear you. Amalei, so Rav Nachman heard this, Chodribi. Rav Nachman says, okay, I have karata. In other words, he was saying, Rashi says, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to anymore say that this is Mal Yiseh, this is not Mal Yiseh. Amar Rabbi bar Avona. So now the Gemara brought up this statement over here about not drinking wine and paskening a halacha. So we're going to be learning now a lot about this halacha, not drinking. Amar Rabbi bar Avona shasi al yispal. A person. Oh yeah, it's just on time, huh? Or just not to start the yantiv. So Rabbi bar Avona said shasi al yispal. If a person drank wine, you shouldn't daven. So we're talking here, of course, about the ikar of tefillah, which is the daven shmai nesri. You shouldn't daven. Even if you drank wine, but b'di'eved, if you davened, it's accepted. The tefillah is you yaitza. Shikir al yispal, if you're not stam, you drank, but you're totally drunk, so then you shouldn't daven. V'mispal tefillah teiva. If you daven, so then the tefillah is a teiva. It's despicable. And it's not accepted. It's even b'di'eved. It's not a good tefillah. So the Gemara explains, what's considered to be a shasui and what's a shikir? Ki had Rab Abba bar Shumni v'Rav Menashe bar Yirmiyah megifti. So have a kamifteri me'adodi. They were departing from each other. Amabra denor, and they were standing by the river, by the place where the boat crosses people over the river. Nor Yufti, the river of Yufti. Omru kol chadmi, and so they said to each other, kol chadmin on lema milse. Let's tell each other halacha, something that we never heard before. When you depart, you should say dvar halacha, and because with this dvar halacha, you'll remember your friend. Right, so instead of departing with whatever shtusim, you depart with, you say dvar halacha, and that's what you go on your way with. Right, this also brings this union of that it's the Pater Adam, it's the neshama that comes into the world and has to go on its way. So in order for the neshama to be able to go on its way in this world, it has to have a dvar halacha, the halacha which is the kiyum of Torah mitzvahs dafke in this world, and that elevates the neshama to remember the shayrish and neshama l'mayla. That's the erech, the chsidish pshat that there is in this Gemara. But over here they were departing, so they said, let's say dvar chiddush. So Pasach Had V'Amar, one of them said, Heichi dami shasi v'eichi dami sheker. What's the line of a person that just drank and his tefillah b'di'evet is good, and a person that drank and is a sheker? Shasoi kol sheyachal adab l'fnei melech. He drank some wine, but he can still stand composed and speak in front of a king. Sheker kol sheni yachal adab l'fnei melech. A person that cannot stand in front of a king. When you're davening Shmei Nasra, what's the connection to davening? Because when you daven Shmei Nasra, you ka'av the kamei mari. You have to be standing like in front of a king and davening. So you have to at least have that ability to stand with Ne'er Melech. That was the new halacha that one of them said. Pasach Hidach V'Amar, the other one also said a new halacha. Chamachzik b'nichsi ager, a person that finds the money of a ger, the possessions of a ger, that has no one to inherit, no yoedish to yashin his properties, and you get the nichsi ager. You didn't work for it. It's something that you got without any work. So Rashi says there could be an ein hara. People look and say, "Oh, where did this person get all of a sudden all these properties?" So you don't want to have to be an ein hara. Ma yasev yiskayim biyodeh. What should you do that the money should remain, the possessions, the properties should remain by you? Yikach ben sefer Torah. Buy a sefer Torah with part of it. Rashi says, but miktzah, some part of it buy a sefer Torah, and the schar of the fact that you use some of these properties to be able to buy a sefer Torah with it. With this mitzvah, the schus of this mitzvah, no ein hara will do anything to you. Amar Rav Sheshes applies this and says, a person gets married, and his wife brings in properties, monies, and again there's an ein hara, so the same thing applies. Buy a sefer Torah. A person makes business and makes money, so the same thing, to get rid of an ein hara. You find a mitzvah, you don't want an ein hara, so do a mitzvah with it. It doesn't have to be dafka sefer Torah. You take part of the money and you fulfill a mitzvah with it. You write tefillin with it. It's also good enough to get rid of an ein hara. Where do we see that if you do a mitzvah, you get stuck even, as we'll see, you can get rid of an ein hara? When the Yidden were going out to fight into the war, this was by Midian, Parshas Matai, so the Yidden said that if the Eibush is going to make us be victorious, so then we're going to give to the Eibush part of what we come back with. So we see over here that if a person gets something, and that's more than usual, he doesn't want that to be an ein hara, so you give tzedakah, you do a mitzvah with it, tefillin, sefer Torah, so then the ein hara will not take effect. Rami bar Abba said, so now going back to a person that drinks and he's not allowed to daven. So how do you get rid of the effects of the wine? Derech mil, a person that travels 1 mil, v'shina kolshu, or if you just doze off, sleep just for a little bit, mefigan es hayayin. It gets rid of the effect of the wine. This is only if you drank 1 revius of wine. But if you drank more than a revius, so then koshken terdosai. Shaderech terdosai. So then you're going to travel on the way, the tircha of traveling after drinking and vishina, and also sleeping after drinking, mishakrosai. It's gonna make it even worse. A person drinks too much, even more than a revius, so then you close your eyes, you sleep, you're going to wake up, you're going to feel even more mavulval. The wine, it's not going to get rid of the effects of the wine. Okay, so what did we say till here? But if you drank a revius, how do you get rid of the effects of the wine? You have to go away of a mil. Is it true that the way of a mil will get rid of the effects of a wine? The Gemara brings a lengthy story. And in the middle of the story, we'll see that it's not 1 mil, it's actually 3 mil. Let's see. So what's the story that happened? We learned as follows. Rabbi Gamliel was riding on a donkey. He was traveling from Akkad to Ksiv, which is somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Eloi was traveling behind him. They found a piece of challah or a piece of bread, or whatever it is, on the way. So Rabbi Gamliel said to him, Eloi, toil gluskim in aderech. Pick up this gluskim, pick up this challah from the road. So they continued traveling. They came across a guy. Amaloi mavgoi toil gluskin alalo. Rabbi Gamliel said to this guy, Mavgoi, that was his name. Mavgoi, take this gluskin. May Eloi, take it from Eloi. Nitpa loy Rabbi Eloi. So Rabbi Eloi wanted to know, who's this guy that Rabbi Gamliel knows him on first name basis? Who is he? So Rabbi Eloi went to have a conversation with this guy. Amaloi mehechanata. Where are you from? Amaloi me Yarishal Burgenin. I come from a city that with tents, a tent city. Ma Shimcha. What's your name? Mavgoi Shmeni. My name is Mavgoi. So then he asked him, Klum, he kirach Rabbi Gamliel me'olam? Does Rabbi Gamliel know you? Rabbi Gamliel saw you and he told me, he named you by your first name, that I should give you the gluskin. So he said, no. Amaloi, lav. No, I never met Rabbi Gamliel before. So he saw the Ruach HaKodesh of Rabbi Gamliel, that he was able to name this guy by his first name, even though he never met him before. Till there is this part of the story. Now the Gemara stops and says, 3 things we learn from this little incident. It seems to be like a very insignificant story over here. Picked up a piece of bread, gave it to a guy, but we actually can learn 3 halachas from this story. Lamadnu, we learn from here, when you see food on the floor, you see bread on the floor, you're not allowed to walk past it, you have to pick it up from the floor. Lamadnu, we also learn from here, that you follow Roiv people that are traveling there, and because most people traveling in this place were Goyim, so therefore Rabbi Eloi couldn't eat this bread. Told Rabbi Eloi to pick it up, but Rabbi Eloi couldn't eat it, and then he told him to give it to a guy. Why? Because most people traveling there are Goyim, so the bread is pasakum. The third thing we learned from this is this was after Pesach, as Rashi says. This incident took place after Pesach. So we learn from here that the chametz of a guy after Pesach is mutter b'hana. Over here, you're going to have hana from it. Rashi says, if you're giving something to a guy, so there's a certain taivas hana. You do a favor for a guy, so you're having a certain benefit of doing this favor for the guy. The guy could return that favor for you. So you're allowed to use the chametz of a guy, it's mutter b'hana after Pesach. Those are the 3 halachas that we could learn out from this part of the story. Now the Gemara continues what happened weiter. Kiven shehigia l'chsiv. Once Rabbi Gamliel arrived to Chsiv, a person approached Rabbi Gamliel. He said, I have a neder. I want you to annul one of a neder that I have. So Rabbi Gamliel turned to Rabbi Eloi that was with him. Did we drink revius of Italian wine? So Rabbi Eloi said to him, yes, we did. So if so, said Rabbi Gamliel, he has to follow us, he has to take a walk after us, until the wine that we drank, the effects of the wine will go away. So this person that wanted to be matan neder walked behind them. How far? Gimel milin, for 3 milin. Till they came to the sulam of tzur, a ladder by tzur. When they came over there to that place, Yorad Rabbi Gamliel Menachamayr. Rabbi Gamliel came off the donkey, Vinis Atif, and he wrapped himself in a garment, and V'yashav V'hitoloi Nidrei, and he sat down and he was matan neder. Okay, now the Braisa is going to continue to say what we learn from this part of the story. There's different halachas we could learn from this part of the story. But before we get to that, so over here we see that they had to walk after him how much? 3 mil, not 1 mil. So the Braisa continues and says, V'harbe dvarim lamadnu ba'isa shah. There's many halachas we could learn from this simple part of the story here. Lamadnu, we learn from here, sherevius yainoi talki mishaker. A revius of Italian wine makes a person shikker. So the shear of it, like we said already earlier, a revius of wine makes a person shikker. That shikker al yaida, that if you're shikker, if you drank wine, you cannot paskana halacha. You did not want to be matan neder. And we also learn from here, shederech mefigas hayayin, that if you travel, if you walk around, then it'll take away the effect of the wine. And we also learn from here, she'ein mefirin nedarim, that a chacham cannot annul a vow, loy rachel, not if he's riding on a donkey, v'loy mahalach, not walking, v'loy oimid, not standing either, elo yoshev, sitting. That's what it says here, right? He sat down. So we have to be matan neder only sitting down. Till here's the Braisa. So the Gemara concludes, Katani miyas. What does it say in the Braisa? Shloisha milin. That they followed him 3 milin in order to get rid of the effects of the wine, not 1 mil. That says the Gemara, Shani yayin talki the mishaket fei. The Italian wine is a stronger wine, and even a revius makes you more shikker, and therefore you have to walk around. You have to go 3 mil, not 1 mil. Fragt the Gemara, is that true? But didn't we say before, if you drank a revius, then walking 1 mil is good. If you drank too much wine, more than a revius, then walking will not help. It's going to make it worse. And even if you sleep a little bit, it's going to also make it worse. So if you're telling me that the Italian wine is stronger, so that's like drinking more than a revius of wine, walking around should not help. It should make it worse. So how did it help over here? Answers the Gemara, Rachov Shani. If you're riding on a horse, on a donkey, that's different. If you're walking around, so the tiredness of a person walking, the combination of a person drinking more than a revius of wine, and he has to walk around, that will make it worse. But if you're riding on a donkey for 3 mil after you drink more wine, that's okay. So the Gemara says, now that you're making this distinction between a person that's walking and a person that's riding, so it's not a question also, this that we said, that to get rid of the effects of the wine, you have to walk 1 mil and not 3. 1 mil is if you're walking. But if you're riding, so then it has to be dafka 3 mil. So because Rabbi Gamliel was riding, so therefore you have to go dafka 3 mil. That could be also an answer to that question. So you don't have to make a distinction between regular wine and Italian wine.
3 mil riding is equivalent to 101.
To 1 mil walking, right. Now the Gemara comes back to another detail that was mentioned in this Braisa, which is being matan neder, mefer neder. Aini, is this true of what we said here, that in order to be mefer neder, you have to do it sitting? But Rav Nachman said, mefirin nedarim, you could annul a neder, bein mahalach, whether you're walking, bein oimid, whether you're standing, bein rochov, whether you're riding on a donkey. So how can you say that he has to sit? And says the Gemara, Tanoi, it's a machlokes Tanoim. What's this machlokes Tanoim based on? The ikel amanda omar, poischim b'charata. There's one opinion that says that the Chacham himself has to help the person that comes to be mefer neder to give him an opening of how to regret the neder. The way you mefer neder is the Chacham has to give him a Pesach. He has to explain him that you wouldn't have made a neder if you would have been aware of these circumstances. The Chacham has to give him this. There's another opinion that says ein peischem b'charata, that you are not pesach b'charata. So what is it? What's the connection? So Rashi explains the connection is if you have to be pesach b'charata, if the chacham is the one that's helping the person find a way out of his neder, so it has to be b'yishuv adas. You have to sit and think and listen to his neder and give him a way out. So you have to sit for that. If you just have to say mutalach, 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 or mufalach, so then you don't have to sit. He tells you the story. He's going to give you the Pesach of why he's having charata, and that's it. You just say mufalach. You can be riding or walking or standing. It doesn't make a difference. So this is a machlokes. The Gemara says, "The Amar Rabbi Bar Bar Chane, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, my Pesach le Rabbi Gamliel lahu gavre." What Pesach? What opening did Rabbi Gamliel give this person to regret his neder? He told him a pasuk. It says, "Yesh boite kemat keires charev." There's a person that expresses words. Boite meloshem bitui. He speaks. He expresses words, and they're like a sword, like he's using the sharp part of a sword. The lashon chachamim, but the language of chachamim, they're careful with what they speak, and they are a chacham that's mataneda marpe. That's a healing. So he touched the pasuk and said, a person that makes a neder and he's not sure that he can keep it, it's roy that he should be killed with a sword. The lashon of chachamim, the koyach of the chachamim is to heal and to be mataneda. So Rabbi Gamliel told him this pasuk in order for the person to realize how severe it is for a person to make a neder, and this will be an opening for him, a Pesach, that he'll realize that he never wanted to make this neder in the first place. This was the Pesach for the charata. So we see that Rabbi Gamliel, because he had to give him a Pesach to have charata, so he has to sit down in one place and not just walk around. Now the Gemara goes back to another halacha that was brought in this Braisa about the food. You're not allowed to leave the food on the ground. You have to pick up the food. Rabbi Yechanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochi, this is only true in earlier generations. She'ein b'nais Yisrael perutzais b'kshofim. Mine? It's this? Oh, it's right over here. Sorry about that. Okay. So lo yishanu elam. Again, where are we over here? Lo yishanu elam b'deiris l'shayim she'ein b'nais Yisrael perutzais b'kshofim. This is in the earlier generations that Bnei Yisrael were not perutzais. They were not, what's the word for perutzais? B'kshafim? Perutzais. What's the word for perutzais?
Open to sorcery.
They were not open to kishuv. Yeah. So therefore the food that you find on the ground, you don't have to be afraid that there's kishuv that they did with it. But in later generations, Bnei Yisrael perutzais b'kshafim, that the Bnei Yisrael were involved with kishuv, mavirid. You can leave the food, you don't want to touch it, you don't want to get affected by their kishuv. Tane, and a Braisa we learned, Shleima Mavirin, whole pieces of bread, that's something that you can leave. Psisin ein Mavirin, broken pieces of crumbs or broken pieces of bread, that you have to pick up. Amar Ravashi said to Ravashi, Psisin loy avdan, and regarding pieces of bread, there's no kishuv that they would put into it. V'aksiv, it says in the pasuk, Vatachala lena oisi el ami b'shalei sa'irim ubepsusei lechem. Even with pieces of bread, they also used it for kishuv. And it says the Gemara, Hassam the shakli ba'akrayu. Over there, it doesn't mean that they put kishuv, they used kishuv in the bread. All it means is that they would get paid for their kishuv, even with pieces of bread. Okay, so obviously this is all something that today doesn't apply. It's kishuv. So therefore today the halacha is when you see bread on the floor, ein mavirin, you have to pick up the bread. Going back over here to the concept of a shikr, that is not allowed to daven. So based on this, he said, I could pater, the whole world would be exempt from midas adin. It's referring to Yidden, of course. And he's talking about from the time of the Chorban until today, you can pater everybody from midas adin. Why? The pasuk says, the Yidden are poor and the Yidden are drunk, not from wine. The Yidden are drunk from tzaras. The tzaras of after the Churban is the reason that Yidden are considered to be like drunk. So if Yidden are drunk, so they're not responsible for anything they do. So therefore, you can pater all Yidden from midas adin. Fragt the Gemara, ich kann mamish pater Yidden from everything. Meisvei, shiker, mekhai mekach. Shiker, even if he's drunk, but his sale is a sale. Memkare memker. So mekho means what he buys is a good acquisition, and what he sells is a good sale. Avar avere shesh ba misa. He does an avera that there's a chiv misa. Misa naisa. He's responsible. He's chayiv misa. Malchus. If it's an avera of malchus, malka naisa. Even a person that drank and is a shikir, he's considered to be like a regular, sane human being, and he's chayiv, he's responsible for everything. So how could he say that he can pata the entire world min adin because of the fact that we're shikir from tzaris, if we see that a person even that has tzara or shikir is responsible for everything he does? El says the Gemara shapatim min atfilah. You can pater everybody. El shapat. Sorry, this is part of the brayse. El shapatim min atfilah. A person that's shikir is pater from davening. That's the only thing that he's pater from, but not from anything else. So the Gemara explains, Ma yacholni lifter. When Rav Shesha said in the name of Elazar ben Azariah that he could pater the whole world, minadin, the Kama that he said, Nami midin tefillah. He was referring also to davening, that he could pater everybody from the chiyuv to daven, the fact that they don't daven properly. If a person will be judged for this, that he didn't daven b'chavana properly, we have an excuse. That in this man Galus we have so many tzaras that we can't be mechavan and our tefillah properly. Rab Chanina said, Lo shanu elo, going back to what it said here in the Braise, regarding the fact that a person is responsible and that his sale is a sale and he's going to be chayav for everything he does. Lo shanu el shelo yagil shechrusa shel light. That's only if a person doesn't come to a point of shichrus like light, where light wasn't aware b'chalal of what he's doing. Aval yagil shechrusa shel light, pata miklom. In a case where a person gets to such a level of shichrus, so then a person is totally pata from everything. So maybe this is said over here in the Gemara also by Hemshech to his point, that in the Zman HaGolus, when you have such tzaras that are mamish to the point of shechrusa shel light, so then you could exempt the patim and adin from everything. Rab Chanina, let's go a little bit weiter. Rab Chanina says, Kol ha-meifik mogein b'shas gaiva. What's the pshat of these words? So Rashi says, meifik means that a person that passes over davening. Why is davening? Davening is called mogein, because the first bracha, Shmei Nesra, is mogen Avram. Right, so a person that passes over, he doesn't daven, because b'shas gaiva, what does b'shas gaiva mean? So Rashi says, b'shas shichrus, a person that's drunk, and he acts like a bal gaiva when he's drunk, and he doesn't daven because of this. So it's soigrin v'chaismin tzaris ba'adai. The Eibishter closes off and seals off any tzaris from him, that they shouldn't come upon him. In other words, the fact that he was drunk, and because of that he didn't daven, he did the right thing. Shanama, the pasuk says, Gaiva afike maginim sager v'chasim tzar. That a person that was drunk and afike maginim, he passes over the mugging, the bracha of Magen Avram, he doesn't daven, the Eibusha closes off the tzaras from him. My mashma dahai afik lishna de'avurihu. Where do we see that the word afik means to pass over? The chsiv, the pasuk says, Achi bogdu, achai bogdu, kamay nachal ka'afik necholim yavayro. So it says ka'afik necholim yavayru, like the river that comes out and passes through. So we see that the word afik means like the waters of a river that pass through. Rabbi Yechanan said this differently. Kol she'einoi mafik itmar. A person that's not mafik. What does this mean? So the pshat over here is the word mafik means to actually speak, to reveal, to say, to express. Right? So what is Rabbi Yechanan saying? A person that's drunk and he does not express the words of davening. It's the same point, that because he's drunk, he's not expressing, he's not saying the words of davening. And not pass through, but that he does not express the words of davening. My mashma dahai mafik lishne de giluyahu. Where do you see that the word mafik means to reveal, to express the words of davening in this case? The pasuk says, "Vayiro afike mayim vayigolu moistes tevel." The afike mayim means the water that comes out. So you see over here that it means to express. Says the Gemara, Mechdi kroi mashma bein lamar bein lamar. So we have a pasuk that the word mafik is true, that it means to pass over, and it also means to express. So, my benai, what difference is there between these two statements? Both statements, Rab Chanina, Rab Yechanan, the way it was said, the point is that when a person is drunk, he should not daven. One says he should pass over the davening, and one says he should not express the davening. What's the difference between them? Says the Gemara, Ike benayu de Rav Sheshes. The difference between them is what Rav Sheshes said. Rav Sheshes masa shinsei l'shamei. Rav Sheshes, if he would drink, so he gave over his sleep to his servant, that he should wake him up when it comes the time to daven. Mar isla de Rav Sheshes, or mar lesla de Rav Sheshes. The argument over here is, if we hold of what Rav Sheshes says, the one that says that you have to pass over the davening says it's not going to be enough just to sleep a little bit in order to be able to daven. If you're drunk, you have to pass over the davening. The other one says that no, if you're drunk, so then you shouldn't express the words of davening while you're drunk. But if you slept a little bit, then it's okay. Then you'll be able to daven. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav Kol Shein Daitem Yushev Esalov. If your mind is not settled in you, Al Yispalo, don't daven. Shenema, because the pasuk says Bitzar Al Yoyre, that if you have something that's bothering you, so then Al Yoyre you shouldn't paskan a halacha. And the Gemara says the same thing also. You shouldn't daven. Rab Chanina b'yoymed derasach, and a day that he was angry about something that was perturbing him. Loy matzli, he didn't daven. Amar, he said Bitzar Al Yoyre. Then in such a situation, Al Yoyre, you shouldn't paskin, and Ksiv, it says you shouldn't daven either. Mar ukve b'yoymed deshusa lo yavanofik lebeidina. On a day that there was a wind, there was a hurricane wind that came out of the south, he didn't daven. He couldn't have a clear mind to be able to paskin. He didn't go to the bezdin, that is. He didn't go to the bezdin to paskin halacha. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Hilchase, Boyi, Tzeluse, in order to be able to paskin a halacha, you have to have the clarity of the mind, Kiyoyme de Istana. Like a day when there's a northern wind that comes out and it's a beautiful day, you have to have that clarity of mind to be able to paskin a halacha. Amar Abaye says, if my mother said to me, it wasn't really his mother, it was a stepmother, the one that raised him, if she said to me, Karev Kutcha, bring me the kutach, which was a certain food. She just told me a little thing. She disturbed me and she said, bring me the kutach, loy tanoi. I wasn't able to learn properly. I wasn't able to learn with the same focus that I usually was able to. Omar Rava said, Ikartsasan kina, if it is a mitzvah. He wasn't saying he wouldn't do it. He would do it, but it would take away his clarity of learning. It shows you to what extent, in order to be able to focus properly on learning, even the tiniest thing could take away your clarity of learning. Rava says, kina loy tanoi. If even a lice would bite me, I wouldn't be able to learn. Mar bered Ravina of the leimes, Mar, the son of Ravina, his mother made for him Zayin money, 7 changes of clothing, l'zayin yami, for 7 days. If you change your clothing, so there'll be no lice, in order for him to be able to learn Torah.